Most of the business dashboards are absolutely going to fail, not because they are not built with the right tool, but because they lack clarity. If you're a business leader and you want to develop good dashboards for your own team, whether or not you are necessarily developing the dashboard yourself or not, probably not because you're a business leader, but in case you would want to bring a lot of clarity to the dashboard development process, in this video, I'm going to share a very interesting 4-step framework that is going to help you get the dashboard built either by yourself or most likely from your team or a consultant. Let's start. The very first thing that you would want to do when you're getting the dashboard developed from your team is the absolute necessity to get clarity on what metrics or calculations or KPIs do you want to see. And I follow a very simple 80-20 principle that I also recommended to all our clients, is that you collect all the possible things that you would want to take a look at in the dashboard and then crunch it down to the 20 most important or 20% most important burning questions that you want to answer, and those are your most important KPIs. Note that when you're trying to develop a dashboard, you would want something working really fast rather than actually collecting a very exhaustive list of requirements that you're not able to fulfill at any point in time. So it's very important that you follow a very simple Pareto principle. Collect as many as you can in the first go and then list down the 20% of them which are the most important to you. Now, there is a very interesting thing, which is the concept of KPIs or calculations and dimensions. Let me give you an example. Let's just say that you're a SaaS company and you're trying to track churn. Now, churn is a number or a percentage that you're trying to track. That churn is nothing but the KPI, but there are also dimensions to that KPI. Now, churn by product. The same calculation, churn, when shown against the product becomes a dimension. Or churn by month actually becomes a dimension. So you want to keep these two things completely separate. What are the KPIs that you want to track? The list of calculations. And the next thing that you want to keep is that how do you want to slice that KPI by the different dimensions? So let's just say that you write churn as the first calculation or the first KPI that you want to track, and you write every single possible slicing or filtering mechanism that you want to use as a filter on this particular calculation. And similarly, you are going to do that for, let's say, 10, 20, 15 calculations that you have made a list of, which are the most important calculations. There's one more thing that you would want to add to this exercise of bringing clarity to the calculations, is nothing but the back of the envelope calculations. So when you're doing this process of defining what calculations do you need, it is super important that you tell your analyst or your consultant what is the raw method or formula to be able to do the calculation. So for example, if you are mentioning churn as a calculation, you want to write down the formula that what formula is going to calculate the churn. So you take the numbers of the users who have left in the current month, divide that by, let's say, the average users in the entire month, which is the opening balance, closing balance divided by 2. That could be one method. So whatever be your method of doing the calculation, you want to write that back of the envelope calculation or method of calculation against every single KPI. That is going to bring immense clarity to anyone who's developing the dashboard. So far, we have discussed the clarity part of it, in which we have discussed, hey, bring the clarity, list down the 20% most important calculations, and then you also have to define what their dimensions are, like how do you want to slice those calculations, which are the filters that you apply, and the other thing is how those calculations are calculated or what's the logic for that, and that's the back of the envelope. Just doing this exercise is going to give yourself a lot of clarity as to what do you even want to see in the dashboard. The very next thing that your team is going to need from you is how do you want to see the visualization? How do you want your data to be presented or your calculations to be presented, which is the visual representation. And at this point in time, what you might want to do is build up some kind of mock layout of the dashboard. Whenever I use the term dashboard, people start to fancy things like fancy charts, slicers, scrollable items on the screen, things moving very, very fancy looking. And that's exactly what I not want you to get caught on. The simplest dashboards are always going to win. And one of the most used visualization that a lot of business people use are nothing but tables and simple slicers or ability to select different elements from a drop-down. That's it. Tables and slicers are going to do 95% of your data analytics needs. So whenever you're trying to design something that is usable for you, maybe not as fancy, just stick to tables if you're not very sophisticated at visualizing things. And that's absolutely fine. It is going to suffice a lot of your needs and you're going to come out winning on the other side. The way you actually make a mock is that you take all the metrics that you have listed down in the previous step, and you categorize them as level 1 metrics, which are the most important metrics. Then you talk about the drivers of those metrics. Then you talk about the diagnostics of those metrics. So we have taken the entire list of 10, 20 metrics. We have listed them. Here are my key metrics, the most important numbers that I want to take a look at. If I want to drill down further, I would like to have another table, maybe on the next page, and then I would like to have another table if I want to further drill down on the next page. So all that you're doing is just literally scribbling on a piece of paper that how do you want the tables to be presented, what slicers do you want, what filters do you want. It's as simple as that. Because all of this is no fancy chart, no fancy pie charts or anything like that. It's just a table. It's very convenient for any business leader to mock up such a visualization, because at the end of the day, what you're asking is for a table. And the table is also going to enforce clarity onto you, because charts, they kind of summarize information, they stack up the bars, they stack up the lines, and in the visualization process, the details tend to get lost. So you will save yourself from all of that hassle unless you are a visualization expert. My humble suggestion to you is that if this is the first time you're developing dashboards for your team, please stick to tables, and you will thank me for that decision, because it will give you the numbers as clearly as possible without creating any extra fluff or any kind of visualization debt. Stick to tables, and let's just move on to the next step. All right, at this stage, what we have done so far is that we have listed down all the calculations clearly. We've listed down their logic. We've listed down the dimensions that you would want to slice it by. We've also given a mock layout of how do we want to see this particular dashboard. At this stage, you give the dashboard for development. Somebody develops it, you check it, and hopefully the dashboard comes out just as the way that you expected, with minimal iterations, because you have done a lot of upfront work to bring in the clarity as to what do you need. At this stage, what you need is training or teaching your people as to how do you use a dashboard. Obviously, this dashboard is going to be used by you, but also by your team. And when it comes to training, there are two things which are very, very important. One, which is the numbers that you're taking a look at the dashboard. Why are they important to the business, and how do you see them? That's the business part of the training. You explain the importance of the numbers, the value behind them, the results that they drive, and why are they significant to the business. That's part number one that you want to tell it to your people who are using the dashboard. The second thing is that a lot of people are scared of technology, and when they see something new, apart from the standard Excel broken files that people use, they kind of get scared. And you have to make it a point that either you or your IT team or the consultant that you have hired is doing good of a job enough to teach people the clicks of the game. What are the different options available? How deep can you go in the dashboard, and how do you navigate that? That's something that you need to clearly communicate it to your team. Those are the two parts of the training that you want to make sure that you deliver: reading and understanding the numbers and why they're important. And most importantly, the second thing is that you also have to tell them that how do you work with this particular piece of technology. The clicks of the game is something that you also have to teach it to them. The final thing, which is super important that a lot of people kind of miss out on, is that you've done one iteration to build the dashboard. Requirements, mock dashboard, training is done. Now comes the maintainability, which is super important, that who is responsible to manage and maintain the dashboard, feed the data, make sure it refreshes, make sure the numbers are right. All of that needs to be tied to a single person's responsibility as well. And that's where you have to align that responsibility to someone in your team or to the consultant, so that you're able to take a look at the dashboard or that report on a repeatable basis. Once you have done these 4 steps, like the metrics part of it, defining the metrics. The second part of that is the mock visualization. The development happened, the training happened. Now the maintainability is also done. Somebody's responsible for that. You're obviously going to see the gaps in the dashboard, something that you wanted to track that you're not tracking at the moment. Which gaps are there in the dashboard? You can list them down, and then the process repeats once again. You will improvise on repeating the dashboard once again. So this is my view of how can business leaders bring in a lot of clarity and instruction and more accountability to the dashboard creation process. It's not as much as it is about the tool as it is about the clarity as to what do you want to take a look at the dashboard. The more upfront work the business leader, which is you, puts in what do you exactly want to see in business reports and dashboards, the better your team, your consultant, your IT team is going to do in terms of developing those dashboards. If you have any questions, please put them down in the comments. We do a lot of consulting work. In case you're interested, please check out our work at goodlyinsights.com, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers. Bye.